How did you get booked onto Howard and that experience? Because you seemed pretty geeked up to be on there as well.
I was more worried and excited about going on Stern than I was to do the Super Bowl, at least the worried part. HBO got him, and I was like, Artie, rip me. When you get out there, just shred me. I don't care. And I didn't know it would go to that degree.
Well, why is Howard over there? I'm curious.
I don't know. It's just different.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Here's the Pitch. It's sponsored by Masses Restaurants in St. Louis. There's 5 locations. stlmasses.com is their website. Go there, check out the menus, directions, and maybe you'll see a picture of Joe Buck, our guest today, who is with me. Because he's a St. Louisan, and I know he likes to travel to St. Louis restaurants and just pop in and sign photos.
Yeah. Oh, hell yeah. I think that's the one thing, Brad, that my wife has found out moving here from LA, originally from Denver, that St. Louis on the restaurant side is probably still a hidden gem. I think we have good hospitals, we got great schools, 2 really good sports teams, and great restaurants. And a nice community that I think is really conducive to raising kids, which I'm doing for the second time in my life. So, yeah, I'm becoming an expert on that too.
Yeah, congratulations. I was thinking about this. This is, I don't know if I'm sure it's been mentioned, but your dad obviously had a couple marriages, had some kids, older and then younger. You're following this pattern. You're doing everything your dad did.
It's kind of, it is weird. And I've thought about it before, kind of the timing of things away from work. Work is kind of, I rode in on his coattails. I was doing Cardinal games when I was a little kid, 21 years old, and got an early start. And that's all on one side of the ledger. And then on the other, the personal side, whether it's divorce at about the same time, a second family, and kind of some of the stuff that went on around his career, I do feel like I am just basically living his life all over again, minus serving my country in World War II. I mean, that's kind of a huge piece of who he was and really what defined him, because that, him going to Germany in World War II and earning a Purple Heart is what allowed him to go to college on the GI Bill, which is where he studied broadcasting, which is where he kind of launched his career to a couple of years in the minor leagues, then to St. Louis. So without World War II and all that went on with that, I don't know that he ends up doing what he ended up doing. So that's one huge difference between the two of us, and probably better that it was him serving the country as opposed to me. I would have been sucking my thumb in the corner.
I don't know. My dad, a couple uncles, my grandfather, my dad was Vietnam, a couple uncles Vietnam. I just don't even understand how they did it. And it's just, I think about myself. I don't think we're the same, but I know I'd be sucking my thumb is what I'd be saying. Yeah.
Yeah, I just don't know what it was about. I do believe, and you're right. Then it came around again with Vietnam, and there's just like these times come up for different generations in our country's history, and I agree with Tom Brokaw that was the greatest generation of, when you consider the casualties and the enormity of the task and people going and doing it. My grandfather, who my mom's dad, was, I don't know, late 30s, early 40s, and just said, I want to enlist, and went in and became part of the Navy. And it was a guy that played in the NFL. It was a great athlete and really had a lot going on and had a career and had 2 young kids. And that was just a time when he was like, you know what, my country needs me, and I'm going to enlist and go serve my country. And thank God there were people like that, or who knows? Maybe there would have been a different outcome to that time in this world's history back in the 40s.
It's amazing because I never know how interviews are going to start. I'm always worried about what are we going to start with. So I thought we'd finish with your dad, or I know we'd talk about him at some point, but I have a prop here. I don't think I've ever showed this to you. I'm showing it now. This is 1989. This is a 12-year-old Brad in the, remember the booth they used to have where you call an inning or something? So I got this in 1989. And your dad signed it, and I was 12. But yeah, so they had that thing where you could pay like $30, go do an inning, and leave. Well, then your dad pops in. I'm like, because now I'm being stupid kid Brad, like, oh, Pascual Perez suck. Look at that hair. And then your dad walks in. I'm like, 2-1 pitch, swinging him, because now I'm scared shitless because I don't want to sound stupid. And I'm waiting for I wanted him to come over, and he finally does. He goes, we need a hit and some runs here. This is going to be a wasted inning up here. And I'm like, that's all I needed.
That's so great.
There's 2 outs, and this is my last chance. Hold on, while we're on tape, let me see. That's Jack Buck back there.
Better get a hit and some runs, otherwise it'd be a wasted inning up here.
I know, 2. I've been up here 2 innings now.
That's awesome. I love it. I didn't know that. I feel like, I feel like that's the time when I first met you, right? Just being around, and then, doing what you do. And I'm glad you've got this podcast. Seeing those pictures and hearing a story like that, I swear to God, I don't want to exaggerate, but I get 3 stories a week. I don't want to say I get one every day, but I get 3 stories a week if I'm in town, for a big chunk of time, which I am now. And people telling me the best stuff about my dad. That's just been the silver lining to everything, since he passed away. He's still alive to me in so many different ways. When I walk into my office, he's all over my office, and there are old pictures of him from back working at, doing Cardinal games on, I think it's Channel 11. There's a really cool picture of him pouring like a Busch beer. It looks like he's doing a live ad read, and there's a KPLR TV camera there in the picture. And, going around Starbucks or wherever I am, there's somebody will like walk around the corner and go, oh my God, I've got the best story about your dad. If you want to hear it, if I want to hear it, absolutely. So, for him to do that and sit down and chime in, and he just loved people. And sometimes I feel like I fall so short in that category because he just couldn't get enough of people's stories. And maybe that's just because of how he came up. He came from nothing, and he made his own way. And I think he loved kind of the human condition and getting to know what made people tick. And that's what made him such a great interview, is he had a genuine interest in people's lives. And when we met countless people at dinners all over St. Louis, going to Canetto's for big family dinners, I mean, he'd see people and he'd remember who they were, and even if they met him in passing. So he had a really great knack for making people feel special when they met him.
No, he was great, and that was 89. My mom framed that like for Christmas in 89, so I still have it. This is like the 5th or 6th move I've ever made, but I was like, wait, I got to show Joe this thing I had. He probably doesn't even know this. But Jack, then he was, as maybe people know, but I started doing public access when I was 15 in my parents' house. And Jack was one of the first people. Like, celebrities were Jack Buck, Mike Bush, Bob Costas. Like, those were the celebrities in St. Louis. And to be 16 years old and have people like that do interviews and be nice to me and then remember you. And, your dad was, how's it going? Atlanta's hot, isn't it? And then you came along and did the same thing, so it's very nice. The one thing I was thinking about your dad, too, though, and I think it's great, I was sad when he passed, but we all know it was kind of at the end. Right. And I was just worried that like people would not remember how great he was, because 5 years, 10 years, you're not hearing him as much. But I feel like there's some sort of resurgence of these shows. Maybe it's great that MLB Network is around, where we get to hear, and he's revered, it seems, even more than he was when he was alive, which is odd to me. Do you get that?
I think that happens, though. I think that happens. It's not just, with my dad. I agree with you. I think for people of a certain generation, I don't know that unless you were listening to those games night after night. That's just how I grew up. So when I've been in the car before, waiting on carryout during this pandemic early on, and I've got Camo X on, and they're playing an old playoff game of the Cardinals and the Giants. And I mean, just hearing, I don't know what it is about that, but it almost, it's like opening up an old photo album, and it just takes you right back to where you were, how old you were, what you were thinking at the time. And I just remember, how important those games were to me, how great that broadcast was when my dad was at his best, Mike was at his best. Those games are so great because they're NLCS games and people are hanging on every pitch, and just listening to their back and forth, listening to my dad's cadence, listening to just the different things that he would throw in that just, it was like an old, like an old glove that just fit perfectly. And it just literally, it could have made me cry if I really concentrated on it long enough, because it took me back to when I was 18, when that was going on. And life is so different now and so much more complicated. And I've got 2 sets of kids, and I got stuff coming and going and career. And back then it was like, my God, it was Cardinal baseball and everything else didn't matter. And I was like that when I was a little kid, when I was in middle school, when I was in high school, when I went to college, living and dying. I was the only goofball probably at Indiana listening to my radio to a Cardinal game just because it brought me back home. And it was, I loved hearing that stuff. I can't get enough, really.
Yeah, it's for you when you say that. There was a thing, I think they showed Ozzy's home run, and people started commenting, like, where were you? Oh, I can't remember. And I said, well, I was at the dinner table eating meatloaf, watching a black and white TV. I sort of remember it. I remember what I ate when Ozzy hit the home run,
I don't know how you cannot know where you were
right.
if you were old enough.
Yeah.
To, how can you not know where you were when Ozzie Smith hit that home run? I was coming back in from football practice at Country Day, which was a complete waste of time because I sucked, and I should have been at the game, but I wasn't. And that was on in the locker room. Somebody either had a radio. I think it's revisionist history for me to say I was listening to it on the radio. I think I just saw it on a crappy TV, but then hearing that call, if that doesn't take you right back to that time in your life, I don't understand how it can't.
And as I said, I don't ever know how these will start, and we're 10 minutes in now, and I didn't think we'd go this far. But the next game is the Jack Clark home run, and your podcast is called Daddy Issues. Well, it's funny. All these stories bring me back to my dad. My dad was just the pessimistic of pessimistic fans. This team sucks. No matter what they're in the playoffs, like the 99 Rams, he never really enjoyed it because they would win. The Vikings game, they won 49-37, but they led 49-17. And he, after that game, well, they just gave up too many points. And I'm like, Dad, just fucking enjoy it. Jesus.
Enjoy it for 1 second. Yeah.
So the Jack Clark home run, we went to the record store up the street. He was a wedding DJ, and he'd buy me a record. I'd get a record, and the Cardinals were down in that game. So in my head, what I remember is that he said, "This game's over. Let's go buy some records. Watch Game 7." And it was on at Butler Hill Records, Jack Clark's home run. That's where I saw that one. So
yeah,
it's just, we could go on and on.
You could, and it's I hope that still exists. I'd like to think it does. I'd like to think that there's a new generation of fans that will be able to say, I remember where I was when, Dylan Carlson hit a big home run against the Padres in the NLCS, if that comes to pass, or whatever it is. I don't, but again, for me, with the radio side of it, the broadcasts of sports have changed so much over time that back then it's almost impossible to even believe that there was one game on a week and it was the game of the week on NBC. And my God, the Cardinals are playing the Dodgers this week on the game of the week. Not even playoffs, just what's Vin Scully going to say, Joe Garagiola going to say about the Cardinals. It was just such a departure from the day-to-day radio that we all were hanging on. And I'd love to think that continues to this day, the love affair with the team. I know that it's out there, but, just one of those, do you remember where you were when? I just hope it's there. And I hope that there's a love for the game of baseball with a new generation that there was. I fell in love with baseball trying to play it, late 70s into the 80s. And when I watch MLB during the pandemic, they were playing old playoff games, Astros, Mets, and it was Doc Gooden against Nolan Ryan. I'm like, my God, does it get any better than this? And I didn't have a rooting interest for either team, but it was just like, God, it's old crappy Shea Stadium, and these two guys are just blowing hitters away, and it's just, I hope the game is that for a new generation. I really do.
And it's so crazy that we're just having this conversation as dudes talking about and then I'm thinking, wait, shit, Joe has calls that people think of this way. The Red Sox, long to hear it. The Cubs, we'll see you tomorrow night. I mean, that's, you're talking about it as if you don't do this, but you are that voice for so many fans, love you or hate you.
It's so different. It's so different, Brad, on TV and being the network guy than being the team guy. Like if you're doing that, those moments that I remember, those calls of my dad's are on radio. Now, I don't know what Vince Scully said when Ozzie Smith hit that home run. He was doing the TV, I believe. I don't know what was said on TV in the Jack Clark game and Pedro Guerrero slamming his glove down out in left field. I don't remember any of that. But those radio calls, when it's somebody that's on your side, so to speak, and you can kind of paint that picture on radio, that's the beauty of it. So it is a bit different. And, when I do a moment like that, I feel like if I'm going to go on and on and on, I feel like I'm taking that moment and trying to make it mine. And I don't feel like I have ownership of that. And it's on television and it's for a national audience. And it's why, I've done enough of these where everybody's like, oh, that guy hates my team. This guy sucks. He hates my team. But that's not my job. I'm not there to pump up your team. I'm just there to cover it. And I'm there to get excited in big moments. That may be for your team. That may be against your team. That may be. So you have splitting it down the middle. It's a weird place to live. And the fun is doing it on for the team's broadcast. And that's where you could really make a memory and get on the outfield wall as my dad is. And it makes me smile every time I see his face out there. But it's just like it's a totally different job.
Would you want that ever? Would you ever get into your 60s, 70s, do all these national games and just pick like a year and say, you know what, I'm going to just, I don't want to take anybody's job, but I'd like to just step in the booth and be the voice. Like Len Casper did this year. Like I want to do radio. I want to do those playoff games. You think? I mean, it's a long ways away, probably.
Maybe. I would never say no. I think it'd be interesting to see where my boys would be at that point. They're 3 basically now. So, yeah, I mean, I think I could see doing a little bit, but I think back with the schedule of doing 162 games, and I did that for years, and it was the best training ground. I mean, my God, in a season of 162 games, you basically see everything, and you're calling everything, and some weeks are brutal, and the team stinks. Some weeks are the great. You can't wait to get to the ballpark, and it's just you're living and dying with the team's success or failure. And it's just that's the most fun. That's when you're a part of a good team. And when I was doing it in the 90s, they start obviously once La Russa showed up and Jocketty was making the deals, and they got better and better and better. But there were some bad years there in the early 90s. And when you're a part of a good team. A part meaning you're the radio announcer and you're waiting for guys to get on the bus. You roll up, you got a good shot to win that night. There's nothing better. But you're only as good as the team is. And so when you do it for a network, it becomes really personal. You're only as good as the job you do, and you're being judged by network executives instead of really an audience that's living and dying with every pitch. So again, I mean, it's totally different. Could I do it? Would I do it? Like you said, I feel weird talking about anybody else's job, but I think down the road, I certainly wouldn't rule that out, because I'd love to show my boys what that's like and what that's all about, and just have them be around it.
Are you a football announcer or a baseball announcer? What are you at? So I'll read this.
I think baseball. I think
24 World Series, 6 Super Bowls. You've done half your life. You've done World Series games. That is a crazy stat, almost. My math is not. But.
Yeah, and I never expected to do one, let alone 20 plus, and I've done more than my fair share, and I'm well aware of that. But baseball is just, I love the strategy. I love the idea that a guy could foul off 6 pitches in a row. I love the idea that, you're talking about potential late game matchups and how managers want to save a guy for a certain situation. I mean, you mentioned the Cubs and Game 7 of that World Series. Joe Maddon did everything he told us he wouldn't do. And I think he did it just out of panic. Like, oh my God, we have this lead and we're going to go for bring the hammer right here. And he almost got him. I mean, they blew the lead and then they ended up winning, obviously, in extra innings. But all that conversation just doesn't really happen for me or for any network football announcer. A play happens and who made the catch, who made the tackle, how many yards, and then Troy talks. And then we're getting up to the end of the play clock and same thing, 2nd and 4. Who made the catch, who made the tackle. It's great because it's huge and there's nothing on TV like it. But the strategy and the conversation that you can have in a baseball game is still, it's how I started in this business, and it's still what I enjoy the most.
And yet you're going into the Football Hall of Fame, and you were nominated for the MLB Hall of Fame in the same year. That's just so crazy. You're half. It feels like you're only halfway through your career. You haven't even really started yet. I mean, you've done 24 World Series.
I'm glad you say that. I'm glad you think that way, because I feel like my mentality has gone from being, oh my God, I'm too young to be doing this stuff, to is time running out. And I do feel like I've got a long way to go, but I've done way more than I ever thought I would. And, the Football Hall of Fame thing was really cool. The way they did it, they surprised me on a Thursday night game. I think the best part of it, and I've said it 1,000 times, but it is true, is that my mom is here to see that. And my boss called my wife while I was doing the first half and said, tell, the family to watch, the game at halftime. Don't tune it out or go, do something else. You're going to want to see this. And for her to see me get that award, something that her husband and my dad got back, I think, in 96, and kind of see that thing come full circle is the best part of it. And really, I don't, I got a phone call. It's a total name drop, but Marcus Allen called me. And he's like, oh my God, man, welcome to the Football Hall of Fame. I'm like, Marcus, this is like an award. I'm going in this, not even the side door. Like, this is, I'm at the kids' table. You earned your way. You're one of the greatest ever. Please, thank you, but I'm not even worthy of that call. It's nice to get, but it's not going to make me work less. And, like my grandma used to say, that and 25 cents will get you on the bus. So I haven't taken a bus in a while.
You have sort of kind of ramped down a little bit with baseball. How many baseball games do you think you'll even do this year outside of the play?
Hardly any. I mean, I'm doing maybe 6 regular season, the All-Star game, which is great because it leaves a big chunk of the summer free. Now, golf was a part of that and took some of those games away because I was doing, 4 separate weeks worth of USGA events. Now that's gone because Fox sold that back to NBC. So it's good because there's a lot of free time. It's tough because then you show up in the postseason and it's like, oh my God, who are these guys? Teams evolve over the course of the year. And when you're doing all these games, it's so easy to keep up because it's your day to day. And when it's not your day to day and life gets in the way, and now you show up and you're doing the Tampa Bay Rays in the World Series, it's like, I need to learn. This is a crash course on who all these players are. Now you can get there, but it kind of requires at the most intense time of the year, your full attention to get to where everybody else is and make references that aren't dated, because the league changes week to week, let alone month to month.
Could you do more if you want, or is this just because of that old golf schedule and it's kind of like, this is kind of nice to have summer off?
Yeah, I mean, I think I could press them to do more. I think, like we talked about, the game of the week, I love doing it, but for the viewing public, it's one of 162 games that are on TV. And I think they've gone, especially post-pandemic, if we can even call it that yet, to more picking up local crews, not going to the expense of getting a whole new production truck, producer, director, all that stuff. So they're picking and choosing along the way and trying to make it the most economically friendly regular season. And then they shoot their main bullets in the postseason and the All-Star game. So I'm good with it, but it does make it more difficult.
So weird times with cancel culture, gotcha moments. You had a few of these just recently. And how hard is it now for you when you start thinking about this that, I better not say that. You just, you weren't even on air for the stupid flyover thing, which I think was great that you went on your podcast and explained it. And that was dumb. The Colin Cowherd thing is funny to me because as I was researching, because we're going to get into this in a second, you said that already on Howard Stern that you drink before games or you have a beer. It's in the Howard Stern interview. You can hear it.
I didn't know where I said it. I mean, so I said it. There you go.
You said it on Stern. Yeah, you said, I have a beer. Right. Nothing happened that time.
Well, nothing happened because it was on Howard Stern. Right. Nobody cared. But I've said it beyond that. And I haven't done it since maybe 2016. It was kind of like a stress relief. And like I said, and then it becomes the part that is so frustrating is that it doesn't represent what I said. So for people who have no idea what the hell we're talking about, I said on Colin Cowherd, as I have many other times, that a lot of the times in the first inning of like a big World Series game, I'll have the runner go get the biggest beer that they sell, and I will have it sit there in the corner of like the front left corner of where I broadcast. And if I feel like something's really tense, I'll take a little baby sip of it. But the point of it is that it's like a visual cue to just relax and know that we're just calling a baseball game. And that was the whole point of it. And then it became a thing like Joe Buck says he drinks during games. Well, I guess technically, but that wasn't really why or what or had anything to do with what I was talking about. And I'm that way. Like I'm talking to you right now. Since I sat down, I took my shoes off. Most of the time, and I was late, obviously I'm late to everything, but I'll light a candle sitting here. I will have stuff on my board. I need visual cues to just calm down and not let the stress of calling a big game overwhelm me. And so that was just one of many tools I use. And so to answer your question, it is a weird time. And the irony of it is I talked about this with Cowherd in that same podcast where I said, it's almost like, why do I go on a podcast and try and be funny or say something kind of out of left field, be quirky? Because if somebody's going to just lift that little piece out and not have it in with everything else and it's out of context, you sound like a lunatic. So it's a tough time. It's a different job than my dad ever experienced. I mean, some of the stuff he said, some of the stuff he did, it was just a different time. That doesn't mean it's better. It was better then. I'm not saying that. You have to give that disclaimer too, that I'm not saying it was better then, but it was just different. So you have to guard yourself at all times and pick and choose your spots. So it's frustrating, but it's either that or don't do it. And I'd rather just put up with it and explain myself. And, that's a better way to go about it.
So I am a huge Stern fan. You went on there in January of 2017. I remember this day because I think I saw it on Twitter. And so I don't have Sirius. I'm like, I'm going to have to activate. I have to hear this. I texted you after it. And I remember I actually looked to see today. You're like, that was a thrill. Tell me just how did that, I know it was during the book tour, but just tell me everything. How did you get booked onto Howard and that experience? Because you seemed pretty geeked up to be on there as well.
I was doing the Super Bowl at the end of that week. I think that was Monday. And that following Sunday, I was going to do the Super Bowl. And I was more worried and excited about going on Stern than I was to do the Super Bowl, at least the worried part. Definitely excited about doing the Super Bowl. Way more worried about what Howard was going to ask me because he's not a sports fan. And he's the first guy to tell you that. So had I not written the book where I talk about losing my voice because of getting hair plug surgery or going through divorce or, kind of the inner workings of what a broadcast is about, just different things, my family history, whatever, that I think opened me up to potentially being a guest, I'm not going to go on there. He's not interested in interviewing me to talk about this week's All-Star game. That's just not on his radar. So I have a publicist, Louis K. Covert Creative, I think is the name of it. I hired them at one point when I was putting the book out. And then, so they start, lining up interviews, and they have a great relationship with Gary dell'Abate. He pitched me. Somehow they said yes. And then I've done it a second time since then. And had my wife come on. So it's just kind of hard to believe that I got a chance to do it. And it was great. I think I learned a lot when I sat there, because I noticed how locked into me and my answers he was. Like I had done other interviews. I did the Tonight Show when Jay Leno was hosting, and another not huge sports guy, but he was looking past me the entire time, looking for cues from the producer or whatever. And it's unnerving. It's like, am I boring you, or how am I going to get your attention back? And Howard was just locked in, and such a friendly face, like with a smile that just makes you want to talk. And I get it. I get why people go on. If you go on Howard Stern and you're not ready to kind of bear all, good luck, because he will get it out of you. So you might as well just have fun with it and just come with it, because he's going to eventually get there anyway. And it was a blast, and he was great, and he could not have been nicer. And it's one of the biggest thrills of my career.
I think your best call is your call of JD eating breakfast.
Yeah, that was the first thing that they had me do too, because I got in there early. They're like, "Hey, would you mind doing play-by-play of JD eating his breakfast?" And I was like, "Oh my God, really? Okay." So they gave me, a few stats, like how many grams of fat the sandwich was that he was eating, and so there I am. It's like surreal. Here I am looking at him through a glass door and doing the play-by-play. They did such a good job of editing that thing, because it was not that funny when I did it, but they put it together in a way that made it a lot more entertaining than it otherwise would have been. So, and then I did a phony phone call, which, I love listening to those. And all they did was had me record lines. I was never on the phone with, who they ended up matching it up with. And they're just firing off little sound bites of me talking. And I was in awe when I listened to it. So got it. I mean, you can tell that there's a bit of a disconnect, but it sounds like I'm giving the guy trouble on the other end of the phone line. And I was never on with anybody. I'm just recording in a studio these random lines that they gave.
And that's what they do for a living up there. It's pretty funny.
Yeah.
You're a fan, right? I mean, you listen to him for.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, I listen now. I listen now for the interviews more so. I will check out every once in a while when it goes down a rabbit hole, kind of some of the stuff they do. Most of it makes me laugh, but when he gets a long, an hour plus with. Take his, I think, in recent times, like him with Vedder or him with Conan or him with, and even people that I didn't think I would love listening to, like Arsenio Hall or different people. And you go, why was I not interested in listening to this beforehand? God, I'm glad I did. And wasn't that enjoyable? So I'm a huge fan of his interviews, and the other stuff's good, but the interviews are great.
Even if he rips you, though, because I remember back early, I think the Randy Moss call they played over and over. He's like, "Oh, listen to this guy up there. What's this disgusting act stuff?" So
it was that, and then Artie when he came on the HBO show.
Oh, I want to ask you about that. Yes.
Yeah. So I mean, that was all going on, and I was listening to that. That was another time when you're like, oh my God, I'm sitting here in my car, just dropped my kids off at school, and I'm listening to Howard Stern and Artie Lang rehash an interview that I had done whenever it was. I don't think it was the night before, but maybe 2 nights before. So, man, it was crazy. But it was, I guess, in the end, all that stuff's great.
For me, and I listened to that day because I was shocked at what happened that night watching on HBO. But Howard, I felt like was on your side, because I think
He was like, why would you do that, Art? Why would you go in there and do that? And little did we know. I mean, I wrote the foreword to his second book, Artie's second book, and he details a lot of that in there. Or I don't know, maybe it was in the first book. Either way, reading it and his little conversation he had with Rudd during a break that happened, some of the stuff Rudd said, Rudd was kind of egging him on to kind of do more. And we now know that he was snorting Vicodin and drinking Jack before he went out there. Not exactly information that I had handy at the time. When I went in, I did go into his dressing room beforehand. I was excited to meet him because I was a huge fan of the show. I was the one that was like, we got to get Artie Lang. If we can get him. HBO got him. And I was like, Artie, rip me. When you get out there, just shred me. I don't care. And I didn't know it would go to that degree, but I was never upset by it. I was upset by the reaction, but I wasn't like out there about to cry. I mean, I kind of, and it got frustrating and I started to lose my patience, but I was trying to fire back. But the whole time you have a voice in your head going, do you really want to get into a battle right now with Artie Lang? Because I'm going to have to say stuff that's going to just blow my whole persona here and just maybe flush my career. So I just had to kind of sit there and take it. And, you know, again, you live and learn. I probably would handle it better now. Maybe not. I don't know what else I could have done. So
I was going to say, what would you do? How would you do anything? I don't even know. I can't even. I can't even.
I'm not going to get into a battle of wits with somebody that's kind of. I mean, that's what he's known for, and it would be like me then trying to heckle him, and it just. I can only say this, and this is not revisionist history. And again, I've told this before, and I think Artie would probably at this point in his life agree with this. But after about the second rip on me or the show or whatever it was, the room went from really laughing to kind of like, this is a little bit too much. And he kind of, I don't think he had a great gauge that night of if it was too much or not. And so it was probably a little bit too much. But again, HBO kind of came out and freaked out about it. I never really cared. So I called him, I don't know, the next day, later that day after I'd listened to Howard and Artie and everybody rehash all that. And I said, hey, I left him a message. I said, it's Joe. I just want to thank you for coming on. I'm not mad at you. I told you to rip me. It's all good. I'm thankful that you even bothered to come down to the studio and do it. So no hard feelings. He called me right back and he's like, anything I can do for you? You know, I'm a comic. It probably went too far, whatever. And we became friends. And, you know, he was a part of the second show, which I had to demand to have him in the second show, or I said, I'm not going to do the second show. And I had to get into kind of a little bit of a battle on that because I had booked him. I'd written something for him at the beginning to do like a cold opening joke. And then the head of HBO, Richard Plepler, came in and said, no, he's not coming on the second show. It's done and over with. And I was like, well, not to me. I haven't been on in 3 months and I'm not going to go out there and act like that didn't happen. This is my life. So I'm either going to be able to talk about it and laugh at myself and laugh about it, or I'm not going to do it. I already have a job. And I won that little battle. And, when that piece of tape came on and he's a part of that opening and the crowd, the studio audience, roared with laughter, I was like, I did the right thing and it was funny and it was well done. So that was another lesson that you learn. I mean, that's the only way I can look at this stuff.
I think I saw you say too, it's like, well, if Conan had 3 shows and then they canceled them, how do you didn't even have a chance to really get into a groove. And then
we had no idea what we really wanted the show to be. So the show took over for a slot that Costas had, but it was an entirely different tone. Like I didn't want to do what Bob was doing. That's what he does. So let's try and do something different, lighten it up, have comedians on at the end. It is HBO at 10 o'clock at night or 11 o'clock at night in the East. So you should be able to take advantage of that, of having kind of no rules. And I just I didn't understand why that wasn't a positive. Like working at Fox and for David Hill for all those years, David would have been the guy to come out and go, And that's why the show's going to be exciting. You never know what's going to happen. It's live on HBO. Tune in 3 months and let's see what happens in show 2. But that was a hard thing. So we never really got into a groove of knowing kind of where to step, where not to step, what the tone should be, what the tone shouldn't be, what the format should be, what it shouldn't be. And that was the hard part because it was every 3 months or whatever it was, 4 shows a year. And it was live. Had it been on tape, that segment would have never aired, probably, with the way they reacted to it. So I'm glad it was live, and I'm glad we pulled it off. And, I wish it had gone on longer, but that's just kind of the way it went.
And when Artie goes, it was funny. Listen to the crowd; they're guffawing. And no, they're not. I mean, they're
not by the end of it. And it was like, okay, we're gonna keep going. And I was like, all right, all hell's broken loose. Oh, good, we're out of time. That's the end of the show. And I just remember getting off. I couldn't even get off the stage. And writers are coming up to me, asking me questions about it. It was just a weird situation for my first time at HBO. But again, I mean, you can only, it's easy after the fact to go, I wish I had done this. I wish I had done that. You can only accept what you do in the moment and live with it. And I don't know that I would really do much different if it happened tonight. I mean, you just got to roll with it and hope that the place you work for backs you up.
Any contact with Artie of late? Everyone I talk to, they don't know where he is. He's been AWOL.
Yeah, I reached out through that same publicist, oddly enough, that got me on Stern. I said, I want to book Artie on my podcast. I mean, we've done a bunch of interviews together since then. He interviewed me. One of the best interviews I feel like I've ever given was hosted by him on a DirecTV thing around a Super Bowl in New Orleans, like whenever that was, 2012 or 13. And, I mean, it was really great. It was good to catch up. So I reached out, and the publicist went through some people. Dave Attell, a comedian, is friends with him. And I think he's just maybe finally kind of tucked himself away to try to get as healthy as he can, and then just laying low. So I don't know that he would do it. Maybe he would do it for me. But more than that, I just want to make sure he's kind of still doing okay, and he's battling a lot of demons. He's brilliantly funny, unbelievable memory, huge sports fan. He's still everything that's why I wanted him on that show.
Yes. So a couple more minutes. I was going to start with your podcast, but we started talking about your dad. But that's the name of the podcast,
okay.
Daddy Issues. It's really good. It's you and Oliver Hudson. Big guest, Adam Carolla, Eddie Vedder, Hank Azaria, and then you got your sports guys, Adam Sandler, Barkley. It's a great mix, but just tell me, I feel like I'm the reason why you're doing one, because we did an interview the last time we did, was your book, and I bought the audio book because I'm not much of a reader. I don't like to read. So I told you, I said, man, it was just like listening to a podcast. When are you going to do a podcast? And lo and behold, you picked Oliver Hudson instead of me to be the co-host, which is fine. Bigger name, but just tell me a little bit about what you would want people to know.
Him, he's not. He's got a million daddy issues. My daddy issues are all kind of coming from a good place because, I mean, he's my best friend.
Well, yeah. So you could have just done a podcast, but you really you do concentrate. Was that what in your mind? I want to do a podcast, but I want to have a reason, like. I wanted to have, some structure of we're going to talk about parenting and things with people you don't hear talk about it. Or was it, I'm going to do a podcast and if that stuff comes up? Because it really is interesting because you don't hear people talk about those things the way you guys are talking about them.
Yeah, we just did one with John Stamos and did that yesterday. And then last week did Tia Mori, who was on the show Sister, which I was really well aware of because my girls watched every episode of that, and I was watching it with them. And she, at the end, was like, I just think it's really cool to hear two, men, Oliver's 44, I'm 51, almost 52, talk about parenting and kind of, being a man in the world today and what that entails and, being a son and being a brother and being a father and being a husband and an ex-husband and all these different things. Oliver and I are really good friends. We're very different. He's kind of more carefree. I'm more, it's almost like the odd couple. I'm Felix and he's Oscar. I'm more straight-laced and he's more kind of crazy and just go by the seat of his pants. But he's a great dad. I like to consider myself, I hope I'm a great dad or a good dad. And talking about this stuff, Oliver had a dad that walked out on him when he was less than 10. He changes the age every time we do a show. So let's say 6. He's got a sister, Kate Hudson, who's, been nominated for an Oscar. His mom's Goldie Hawn. His dad, his de facto dad, is Kurt Russell. And he always feels like he doesn't measure up. And he also is still, obviously scarred by his dad leaving him at such a young age. And he's a great dad himself, and he wanted to break that cycle of kind of feeling abandoned as a child. And he's done that successfully. And then for me, my daddy issues are from all good stuff. I love my dad. He was my best friend. I idolized the guy. In St. Louis, I'll never measure up. And I think those are the daddy issues that I have. And that's fine. That's not like I don't have any resentment to him for that at all. But that's having a through line, I think, is necessary, at least for me, to have something to go back to for every guest. If you talk to Eddie Vedder, if you talk to John Stamos, if you talk to Nikki Glazer, if you talk to Adam Sandler, everybody's got a story about their dad. It may be great, it may be horrible, it may be something in the middle. But everybody's got a story, and everybody comes from somewhere. So I think talking about that stuff has been really rewarding and fun, and it's slowly growing in popularity. So it's nice to have something of my own and have something of my own that's not just sports.
Yeah, it feels like this is like the outlet for you. I always felt like that would be perfect because maybe the HBO thing was a little too stiff and stodgy. Undeniable was just kind of straight on interview, but this is where you get to be you and you can curse and get to kind of just say the thing. And then also, like what I said, when you have a drinking thing come up with Colin Cowherd, you can go on, and that's what I was really interested in. Or the flyover incident, you talked about it easily, and just that way you get your voice. You don't have Dan Caesar picking out quotes or Rudy Martzke. I don't even know if he's still, I guess he's not doing that anymore, but you get to sit.
There's a fake Rudy Martzke out there. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. And I think anytime you kind of give somebody else control over your voice, so to speak, you don't know how it's going to come out. And so when it's you and you get a chance to slowly, methodically go through something that happened, it's a pleasure. It's like, okay, if you want to really know what happened in the flyover thing, which was us talking facetiously way off air before the game to our producer. It was stuff we talk about at dinner, stuff we talk all the time about. If you want to know what that was really all about, as opposed to what was kind of sold up the river with pirated audio that was taken from a rehearsal, well, then here's where you can go and listen to it. Or if you want to know about the Colin Cowherd situation, what I was actually saying on there instead of what becomes clickbait, then come to the podcast. And so, yeah, that's kind of a fringe benefit, but not the reason to do it. But it's certainly nice to have that once a week to go, well, I'm going to save my rebuttal for when my name's on it, not somebody else's.
I appreciate this time. I know I've spent more time with you. I have a couple quick hits. What's going on behind you? I see an Emmy. I see some pictures. Do you mind us just kind of taking a look at what's going on back there? What do you got? Anything fun to tell us?
I've got the World Series trophy that was my gift from my dad for Christmas in 1982, a couple months after the Cardinals won the World Series. So that's what that's from. It's kind of a miniature version, but legit. I mean, it's not plastic. It's heavy. If there's gold involved, there's gold plated something. And then an Emmy, and then I think a lot of what else is back there? My dad's scorecard from McGwire. McGwire year, I believe, when in 98, one of those home runs. And then just a lot of pictures of my dad and me, pictures of my mom's back there somewhere. Howard Stern is over here.
So that's what I thought. I didn't want to say anything. I was like, is that Howard over there? Why is he over there?
Howard's over there. My kids are somewhere. They should be way more prominent than they actually are.
Why is Howard over there? I'm curious.
Just I don't know. It's just different. And if I go on, like I sat in this seat for an appearance on the Ellen show, and for her to see Stern back there, I don't know. He sent me that. It's an autographed picture of him. I've had 1,000 autographed pictures from people, none of which are displayed anywhere, and most of which have been lost. But that one I put up, and I don't know. It would be a good show to kind of dissect what's behind everybody and kind of go through the reasons why, certain friends, a specific golf trip, a moment, with my wife on a, important vacation, or my mom is back there from Broadway. That was like her headshot back in the 60s. I feel like everybody kind of had to make their best background this past year. And this is kind of a mess behind me, but it's not like the Da Vinci Code, but there are things back there that I think are important to me. And if you really took a minute to go through all that, I don't want to bore your audience because they can't see it. So that's kind of what's back there.
No, that's why the man cave became kind of a nice thing back here. People ask why I stand, and it's just more comfortable. I mean,
nice. I need to get a hold of your framer and or your picture hanger.
That's me.
Whoever
I did that. That's eBay. That's
a heavy OCD, which we just talked about with Howie Mandel. I'm kidding about the OCD part, but Howie Mandel does come out this week. I don't know when this podcast is going to air, talking about a lot of that stuff that he's dealt with. But my God, that is a level playing field back.
So a friend of mine he's an architect type guy, and he had a picture, and it's like 1,000 times more nicer than this. So I liked it, and and all you had to do, this is really easy. It was you just put the piece of paper, and you put the frames in, and then just cut the paper out. It was more. I'm not good at this stuff, but it actually turned out. It's the 2006 and 2011 Cardinal World Championships, along with some Legends Camp, and there's me and Mark McGwire after the 2000 NL DS, and when they won the Central. I'm telling you what is going on back here with me. I don't know if you...
a lot of that stuff kind of blends in for me. I'm better at 80s trivia than I am at anything in the 2000s.
This will go somewhere. This will definitely... And I always have to ask... We've done a bunch of these interviews. I always go, so what's next? So how many more years of baseball? Is there anything? I mean, you're doing a podcast. It feels like we're in a good groove right now, right?
I've carved out, I think, as good a schedule as I can carve out. I think the one thing that people mistake is that they think I'm constantly working, which I like that perception, but that's not reality. I mean, when I was a young dad in my late 20s and early 30s, which sounds really young to me now, I had more time with my daughters than any of my friends that were, going to the office, doing the 9-to-5 thing, getting maybe a minute to themselves on the weekend, going and playing golf. I was there like Monday through Friday. I'm home. So I'm there for homework. I'm there for carpool. I'm there for morning drop off. I'm there for, practice after school, whatever that was. So I think schedule wise, I'm good. I don't hope to change anything anytime soon. And, I've managed to figure out a way where I pack the majority of my schedule between October and the end of January. And the rest of the calendar is time to either just get out of people's television screen or raise a family. And that's, it's the best of both worlds. And I, what's next is just continuing to do what I'm doing, hopefully growing the podcast out bigger and better. But even if one person listens to it or a billion people listen to it, it doesn't really change kind of why I want to do it. I just want to do it because I enjoy it, and I enjoy my co-host, and most of the time enjoy the hell out of anybody we've had on. So it's fun to do, and that's what fun is going to dictate whatever choices I make going forward. If it's fun and something exciting that I want to do, I'm going to try to do it. And if it isn't, then I'm going to eliminate it.
I hate to be very personal, but every morning on Google, I'd see that you'd sold a house. So I'm glad.
We sold a house here. We're moving to another house, literally down the street. Okay. So
people are worried. Like, is Joe leaving St. Louis? That's like a huge don't.
No. Just kind of trading one for the other, and with boys this little, having a little bit of space between us and them is what we're kind of trying to achieve. But yeah, love the house we're in, which is the house we just sold. Excited about the house we're going into, but going 200 yards from where I'm sitting right now.
Good. All right, everybody can calm down. Joe, I know you do. Yeah. You got a lot of people asking you to do these, so I always appreciate you taking some time. This is always fun. Like I said, grew up with your dad, grew up listening to you. You've always been good to me, so I appreciate this. And maybe we'll do it again in another 5 years. I think I got most of the stuff here. This is how I do my prep. I don't know. But
I'm proud of you. Yeah, no, I'm obviously, yeah, of course. And sorry, I'm tough sometimes to pin down, but I'm happy to do it. I'm happy for your success and all that you're doing. I feel like I've watched you grow up. So good for you, and thanks for having me on.
All right, that's Joe Buck. We thank Joe. We hope you enjoyed this. Brought to you again by Masses in St. Louis, 5 locations, stlmasses.com. We'll see you next time.